Thank you again for letting us come up and speak tonight. I know it's late, so I'm going to do a quick review, a little bit about property management, and we're going to go through a list of the top 10 landlord mistakes in property management. And these mistakes are things that we've seen in the market, not just from folks that own properties, that may have 2, 3, 4 properties and they're doing their own property management, but also we see these mistakes being made with I use this word loosely, professional property management companies. And so these aren't in any specific order, but just an idea of errors and things you need to be aware of if you're going to be a property manager. So one of the biggest mistakes we see here is failing to screen tenants properly. So if you're going to have a property that you're going to lease and you've got multiple people moving into that property, make sure that anybody who is 18 years or older, you're doing an application on. That means that you're doing a background check. That means you're doing a credit check on that person. You're doing the verification of income, the verification of employment. You're checking previous landlords because they're an adult. You want to know who's in your property. Something to think about is that when even though they're not living in your house, you want to treat them as if you're renting your own room. So you want to know everything possible you can about the person going into your property. You've made an investment on that property, right? Just don't give it over to anybody. Make sure you do diligence. If you do your due diligence, you know what their credit background is. You know their work history. You know if they've had a criminal history. You know where they've worked before, where they've lived. If you know everything you possibly can about these people, the chances of these people turning out to be bad tenants is dramatically lower, okay? Does that mean that, yes, every time you're going to get a perfect tenant? No. But if you do the right steps, the chances of this particular tenant going bad on you is dramatically lower. So make sure that you do the proper screening. Number 2, failing to complete a tenant condition inventory report. Before a tenant goes in that property, make sure you do your own condition report. That means it includes getting pictures. That means you got to take 30, 40 plus pictures of the interior. Why? Because you want to protect yourself, you want to protect the owner, and you also want to protect the tenant. Now when that tenant moves in, we give them 5 days and they have to have their condition report to us. So when at some point in time, a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, they want to move out, you have pictures that document the condition prior to them moving in. You have your condition report. They have their condition report. So if there's holes in a wall or a door missing or whatever, they say, well, no, that's how it was. Here are the pictures. Here's your condition report. Here's my condition report. You protect yourself. Again, you're protecting the owners. You're protecting yourself. You're protecting the tenant. So just make sure you do your due diligence. And all this stuff takes time. But if you take the time and effort to do it, financially, you'll protect yourself and your property. Number 3, failing to respond to repair requests. Sometimes as investors, we think, well, I got a property, and for me to keep my ROI, my return on investment high, I'm not going to do any repairs. Okay, so if you went and bought a $150,000 car and you just left it outside, you know there's a hailstorm coming through, and you just left it outside in the middle of a field for 10, 15 years, you never did anything to it, what's going to happen to that car? Well, your investment's going to fall apart, right? It's going to rust. It's going to look ugly. You're not going to get any return on it, right? Folks, here's the deal. If a tenant tells you they got a repair and it's legitimate, you got a leaky roof, you got a leak underneath the sink, your hot water heater's not working, the AC is freezing up on a regular basis, go get it fixed, okay? You're investing back into your property. If you let those items keep sliding and they keep going and you have more and more issues, what's going to happen to that AC? Well, it's going to be a domino effect, right? Those issues are going to get bigger and bigger. So don't be afraid to repair things because remember, this is the property that you paid money for. This is your investment. Treat it as such. Now, here's the other issue. If they stop calling and telling you there's an issue, so then 2, 3 years down the road, you find out you have a leak from the hot water tank or the AC return line that's been going on for a year or 2 or 3. Now you got mold in the walls. You have all kinds of issues. So, and also think of it this way: a happy tenant equals hopefully a long-term tenant, right? If you're not turning that property over every year, you're not having to pay for that procuring of a tenant, you're not having to do make-readies, so take care of your property if you got repairs. It's good for you, it's good for your investment, it's good for your tenant. Number 4, handling deposits incorrectly. So if a tenant is moving out and you say, okay, well, there's some, say they have a $1,000 deposit, security deposit on the property, and there are some repairs or items that were broken or need to be fixed, and it's their responsibility, you have to notify them of that. You just can't keep the deposit and say, well, thanks, I'm glad you moved out, okay? If you don't have those funds back to them and documentation of why those funds were not released back to them within 30 days and they take you to court, you're going to wind up paying 3 times that deposit. Who wants to do that? If you have a $1,500 security deposit and the court says you're paying 3 times, that's a lot of money out of pocket, isn't it? Okay? So do the right thing. And again, these are procedures that need to be done. And it doesn't matter if you're a professional property management company or if you're just managing your own property that you have, right? You're under the same laws and the same codes. So make sure you do your due diligence when it comes to the security deposits. Number 5, not having proper financial reserves for your property. Guys, this is common sense. If you're going to go buy a property, make sure you have the proper reserves, right? Because what are expenses are going to come up? We know repairs happen, right? That's life. What else? We have a great rental market right now, right? Well, what happens when that rental market slows down and you can't rent a house in 5 days and maybe it's going to sit there for 30 or 60 or 90 days? You still got to pay a mortgage on it, right? So make sure you have the proper reserves. So that means that you got to go down and get a separate savings account or checking account for that specific property, and you have 3 to 4 or 5 months reserves. Go do that. So that money sits in that account. So be smart about it. Each property you get, make sure you have the proper reserves. So when those bad times happen, you can afford to keep that property. Number 6, not meeting state and local housing codes. Just because you're not a professional property management company doesn't mean that you're not still under those same codes. So you got to make sure you have the proper locks on the doors. And we see this all the time. We get a company, folks that come over and say, hey, I want you to come take over this property. We don't like the company we're working with. And you go in there, it doesn't even have the proper smoke detectors. It doesn't even have the proper locks. These are the basic 101s of property management. So make sure you know what the codes are on a property so that you're not in violation. You don't want that to happen. Number 7, all agreements must be in writing. Again, this is kind of common sense. Whether you're writing a real estate deal or leasing a property, make sure that everything you have and agree to is in writing someplace. You can't just have a handshake and say, oh, okay, well, oh, you're going to have a pet? Okay, well, we don't need a pet addendum. Just make sure you give me my $350 next week. Okay, no problem. The chances of you seeing that $350, pretty small, okay? And the chance of you going after that person to get that $350, not going to happen, right? So anything you do, whether it's agreeing to a repair, make sure you have it in writing someplace. Just protect yourself. Number 8, using the correct leasing agreements. Now, you can go online and just grab some leasing agreement and have somebody sign it. Well, how do you know if it's even legal in the state of Texas? You may be pulling something off for Arkansas or New Mexico or California, okay? Make sure you have the proper leasing agreement. So make sure that it's a up-to-date leasing agreement. You pull something offline, it may be a leasing agreement that was good for 5 years ago. Guys, leasing agreements and codes and rules change, so they're updated every year. So make sure you have the proper paperwork on that. And what I'd recommend for you on that, so you don't have those issues, go get a real estate agent or a leasing agent to go do it for you, because they know what the rules and regulations are, they have the proper paperwork, and that's the best way to go. Spend a little money into making sure that things are done right. Those are areas you don't want to skimp on because you can wind up having major issues. And if you have an invalid contract and you want to go after your tenant, what's the judge going to say? You don't have a lease. That's any good. So make sure you do things properly. Number 9, not enforcing leasing terms. Now, folks, if you have a tenant that's been late on rent, and sometimes you collect the security or the late fees, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, and you get to the judge at one point and say, well, I want to charge all these fees. Well, have you been collecting them consistently? You're going to run into the issue if you want to collect those funds. If you tell them if you get a pet, you need to let us know right away, and there's going to be a $350 pet security deposit if you let us know there's a pet, and they go do it and you don't get the security deposit, you're also going to run into issues down the road. So be consistent, make sure everything's in writing, and enforce all parts of the leasing terms. And number 10, completing yearly inspections. Folks, this is an investment you have. I have 4 kids. I check in on my kids at least once a year, right, because they're an investment of mine, okay? This is a house that you have, right? I hope you check in on your kids more than once a year. All my kids are in Switzerland, so, they're, right. Okay, so you want to check in on your kids, right? Same thing with your house. Just don't let it sit out there. Go do a yearly inspection. It's a great time. Some people do it every 6 months. We do it bare minimum once a year. So if somebody's renewing or, of course, somebody's moving out, we know what the condition of the property is. It's important to know. It's money and time investment you have, right? We're buying this property with the idea that it's going to build wealth for us. It's going to help with us retirement or pay for college, whatever it is for our kids. If we're not paying attention to it, that investment can fall apart very quick. So make sure you pay attention to that investment. And last but not least, folks, property management is like it's its own beast. And for those people who do property management, I'm sure everybody's got their fun stories and they've got their horror stories to it. you need to know what you're doing in property management because you're liable by law. So what I'd always recommend is come see HRG. We'll take care of it for you. That makes it easy for everybody, right? So I'm in the back if you have any questions about property management or you have any issues. I'm not a lawyer, okay? But I can help you, guide you with your different situations that you've had. We've experienced a lot of different situations being in business for 10 years. I'm happy to help you out, and that's all I got.
Talk about protective classes in Austin, if you don't mind.
Yes. Well, I mean, how much time do we have? There are protected classes. For instance, I'll even go to a whole another genre here. If you happen to get a call and you're marketing your own property on Craigslist or put on Truly or whatever, and you say I've got a rental property, and you put there's no pets. Well, somebody comes up to you, calls you on the phone or emails you and say, hey, well, I have a pet. It's an iguana, and it's a certified pet because I have this particular condition, and I have the documentation saying that, yes, I can have this pet because I have this condition. It helps me. Well, you say, nope, sorry, I can't help you. Guess what? You can be sued. Okay? If you say we don't allow dogs or cats, and this person has a proper documentation saying, yes, they have to have this for medical reasons, and you say, sorry, I can't, man, you're in trouble really, really quick. So it's, again, knowing what the rules and the laws state. And, of course, do rules and laws, do they change on a regular basis? Yes. So that's why having a professional property manager working with you helps, because that's our job, is to know what those codes and those things are. So, and I mean, and it goes for anything. So just you got to know what you're doing. You got to make sure that you don't do things that's going to cause you to lose money, and we don't want to do that, right? No.